La Garde Recule is a simple postcard game published by Against the Odds. It's a postcard game, so it all fits on a single postcard, and I have the original somewhere. A good thing about postcard games, they're very portable. The other thing, not so good, is that it's very easy to misplace them. In any case, I rarely play the actual copy of the poster games that I own. I usually make copies so I don't have to cut out the counters that are part of the original postcard. I simply print a copy from the files on Board Game Geek. That also allows me to make an enlarged copy. So what you see here is an enlarged copy of the game. But of course, it's a copy, so it works exactly like the real game. La Garde Recule is a game about the Battle of Waterloo, about the last phase of the battle, when the Imperial Guard, or the French of course, tried to break the line of Anglo-Dutch defenders that were on top of the ridge. And here we see the first wave of the French already ready to attack. The game may last up to 5 turns, and in turn 2 and in turn 3 there are other 2 waves of French units that will enter from here. It's a 2-player game. It is a card-driven game. You will need to provide your own deck of cards, regular playing cards. And you assign 2 sides. A side is the French, trying to get on the ridge and to inflict damage on the opponent, of course, and the other side is the Anglo-Dutch, trying to prevent the French from leaving the board from the north side, and also trying to prevent them from inflicting a lot of damage. What happens is this: you set up the game like this. There are hexes with red diamonds, regular red diamonds, and other hexes with a red diamond and a small R printed on them. The R hexes is where the Anglo-Dutch player sets up the reserve units, which are those units there. Regular British units and regular Dutch units are set up on the regular red diamond hexes. And these are the hexes where the French player will set up his units. As I said, 2 at the beginning, 2 more come from here in the following turn, and 2 more in the following turn still. In turn 2, you also have Wellington, which is a special piece that, of course, will benefit the Anglo-Dutch. Wellington runs around like a madman during the battle, trying to lend a hand and to give good advice and to direct things hands-on in the most critical spots. You place Wellington on one of your units, and that unit has a +1 in attack and defense for as long as Wellington stays there. Units have 2 values printed on them: attack factor and defense factor. They are all infantry with the exception of this Dutch unit here, which is guns. Card-driven game, as I said. You shuffle all the cards, and then to start the game you will draw a card. If it is a red card, it applies to the English player. If it is a black card, it applies to the French player. If you had a deck of cards with red and blue cards, that would be just perfect. Now, if you drew a number card, if it's an odd card, it allows you to activate 3 units of the corresponding side. If it is an even card, it allows you to activate 2 units of the corresponding side. So if I draw a red even card, is 2 units of the Anglo-Dutch. A 7 in a black suit, then it is odd black. It allows me to activate 3 units of the French player. Units that have been activated can move by 1 hex into an empty vacated hex. Units never stack, never move through one another. So an activated unit can move by 1 hex or attack, not both. I like this. These units need to either get in position and fire, or they can just, charge and fire at the same time. That would not be very Napoleonic, in my humble opinion. When you attack a unit, you can attack an enemy unit that is adjacent to you or up to a range of 2. So the first hex not adjacent to you. To resolve combat, when you're attacking an enemy unit, suppose that this is the case, this unit moved there earlier, now it is activated, and it is going to attack that unit. You draw a card. This time you disregard the color. You simply look at the number and whether or not the card is a face card. If it is a face card, the attack is a failure in any case. Nothing happens. You missed, automatic failure. If it is a number, you look at the number, you add the attack factor of the attacker, and to that sum you subtract the defense of the defender. Suppose we drew a 4. 4 plus 4 is 8, minus 3 is 5. Other modifiers may apply. For example, a gun gets a positive modifier when attacking adjacent units. An infantry gets a penalty when attacking non-adjacent units. So infantry will tend to attack from adjacent spaces if it does not want to suffer a penalty. There's a penalty for attacking into woods and a penalty, actually a bonus, for attacking from a hill hex into a clear hex. So that is an advantage that the Anglo-Dutch have at the beginning of the game. So draw a card, add the attack of the attacker to the numerical value, subtract the defense. If at that point the total modified number, which may be modified by other factors is still higher than the defense of the target unit, then the attacker scored a hit. If it is equal or lower, then nothing, that's just a miss. If you inflict a hit on your opponent, then you simply flip the unit to its reduced side. If the unit is already on its reduced side and takes a second hit, the unit is eliminated. This is really the basic idea of the game. You draw cards to activate units, then you choose to move or attack, and you draw another card when you're resolving an attack. When you're drawing to activate units, if you draw a face, that's a special thing. Again, red faces apply to the Anglo-Dutch, black or blue faces apply to the French, same as above, but the effect is that with a face you can either activate a single unit or you can restore, rally a reduced unit. That is, you can use the face result to take a reduced unit and flip it back to its If the unit was on its reduced side, then you can use a result to flip it back to its full side. If you don't have any reduced units or you don't want to use the effect like that, as I say, you can still use a face to activate any one unit. So units that are reduced can be restored, but units that are removed from the game are out of the game for good. The turn ends when a joker is drawn from the deck. So actually you will keep a single joker in the deck when you're setting up the game. If there are other jokers in there, just get rid of them. The game, as I said, will last up to 5 turns, so when the joker comes out, you reshuffle all of your cards and you start the next turn. Victory is based on what the French player does. The French player wins by exiting 3 units if they're fresh, or 4 if even one of them is reduced, from the north X. So exit 3 or 4 units from the northern X, for the northern side of the board. As a French player, you win the game. You manage to effectively break the Anglo-Dutch line. You drill through there, and that's a great advantage in position. You also win if there are no allied units left on the map. So instead of gaining position, you simply spill a lot of blood, inflict such a shock that in any case you will manage to win. In that case, you have still opened quite a gap. You don't have the position yet, but now the area is open. So 2 ways for the French player to win. The Anglo-Dutch player wins simply by denying victory to the other side. If at the end of the game the French player has not met his victory conditions, then the Anglo-Dutch player wins the game. Now, this game, I decided to give it a try because I was looking for a simple, super simple Waterloo game to play with my students. I'm teaching a class about the war, and among the other books we are reading the famous book The Face of Battle by John Keegan. It has a chapter about the Battle of Azincourt, and we played a game about Agincourt last week. This week we were reading, one of the readings was the chapter by Keegan about Waterloo, and I thought, wouldn't it be great if I found a game that kind of exemplifies some of the dynamics of that battle. And this was perfect. First I played it by myself, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it for the small, simple game that this is. Of course, this is not the deepest or the most complex game out there, but for the cost, which is 0, because these postcards are floating around for free. Usually you find them in war game magazines or in boxes of war games as a free add-on. For the cost, which is 0. Even if you make your own copy, it doesn't take much material, it doesn't take much time, doesn't take much to learn the game. So for what the game is, actually it is still pretty pleasant, because there is a degree of uncertainty that makes the game very solo friendly, with cards being drawn at all times. If you're playing both sides at the best of your opportunities, you definitely will encounter enough randomness to surprise you all the time. But as I said, for as simple as the game is, it has a mini narrative which is satisfying. Again, put everything in the context of, yes, this is a postcard game. So I played with my students. I made several copies, so I divided the students in groups, taught them the game, and they were playing the game. I encouraged them to also look at the game from the point of view of Clausewitz, which is another author that we read with a selection from on War, which seemed ideal, talking about Napoleon. And I asked them to have a look at the game in the light of Clausewitz. The game could be seen as exemplifying some of the things that Clausewitz said. And one of the ideas was that of the shock. Of course, that if you shock the opponent, if you hit particularly hard, then you may be able to inflict a great loss on them. The game of cards, the fact that the game was card-driven, and the Clausewitz states that of all human activities, the one that is most similar to war is playing cards. So that was perfect there. And overall, just seeing also some of the elements that we read about in John Keegan's essay here come to life, even though in such a simplified form, really made that a very interesting, a very rewarding experience. For an experienced wargamer, this may not be much, but if you're playing a game with students that do not usually even deal with history, that may have a hard time visualizing from a written text how a battle works. They read the paragraph about the attack of the Imperial Guard. But if you help them see things on a map, then that cements the knowledge and understanding of the matter in the mind of the students much, much better. Definitely, whenever you play a game about a topic, that is the topic that they will remember for a long time, possibly, hopefully, forever. And as I said, we had several groups. Each group was playing the game. The game was absolutely accessible and playable by non-gamers, let alone war gamers. There were neither gamers, regular gamers, nor war gamers in my class, and they could still play the game, understand the dynamics, understand the rules, and enjoy the game. What was interesting to me, going around the class and having a look at the various games, answering questions and things like that, I saw that actually the game can play out in very different ways. It is mainly driven by what the French will do, but not necessarily or not only. The English definitely have various ways of influence the overall course of action. What interested me is that really different groups were going about the task, the mini puzzle, in different ways. And actually, the game played in very different ways from group to group. There were groups where the French decided more for like a static approach to fire against the British and reduce their units early on before they started moving up, and as they hoped, before the English could fill in the gaps. Other people just always attacked from adjacent, so they were hoping to have 2 cards in a turn because that would allow them to activate their units, because a card allows you to move, but then if the next card activates the enemy, then it is the enemy that can attack without penalty. So you're hoping 1 turn or 1 round you move, 1 round you attack. So we had some some groups in which the French were simply charging through and trying to inflict a lot of damage and to gain a lot of position, going crazy in attack from turn one. Some other people biding their time a little bit, waiting for reinforcements before they put together a more powerful charge. The Anglo-Dutch sometimes defending more like in the rear, sometimes desperately trying to fill in the gap to keep this advantage. Some really brave Anglo-Dutch even braving into descending from the ridge and going into clear terrain just to push as forward as possible the line of defense against the French. So it is a simple puzzle, it is super minimalistic, but actually it has a couple of ways in which it can play out, which I think make the game not a great game, but a decent game for what the game is. Definitely a decent, entertaining postcard game that, as I said, it has, if you also are into teaching, if that's part of what you do, it can definitely be a good way of exemplifying a concept or two related to John Keegan's famous essay, related to Waterloo, related to Clausewitz even. And if not, this can be a very nice, simple introductory war game if you are trying to introduce a new player to the wonderful side of the hobby, of the gaming hobby, which is wargaming. You can play with the very young gamer. Once you know what to do, the game can play in 15, 20 minutes, a little longer. It took us in my class simply because the players were unfamiliar with the entire idea of gaming and wargaming. So it took them a little longer to warm up, but definitely they were able to catch up and enjoy. La Garde Recule, an important, probably the most important, or at least the most spectacular phase in one of the most important battles in European history, captured here, that specific attack in postcard form. Super simple, super minimalistic, but enjoyable, and as I said, with some history sprayed in here and there. Not a super deep lesson in history, but history theme is somewhere in there. And again, every time that a postcard game manages to do at least that, to me, that's already an achievement.